Hey everyone, it's Marvin. Thanks so much for listening to Books and Boba. I just wanted to take a quick second to remind you that Books and Boba just launched our Patreon to help support our future endeavors. Rira and I have been running Books and Boba for the last 6.5 years, and we've always talked about wanting to do more, including expanding our content offerings, being able to go to book events and do more coverage. And so to help us get closer to those ambitions, we started a Patreon to help us grow and to better support books by Asian and Asian American authors. We are offering 2 tiers for our Patreon. The first is our regular Boba member coming in at $3 a month, which will give you access to our brand new Books and Boba Discord server so you can engage with your fellow Books and Boba Club members and also Rira and myself in real time. This is where we'll be aiming to move the bulk of our book club discussions, but rest assured we'll still have a presence on Goodreads as well. And our premium tier is our Honey Boba member tier coming in at $5 a month, where in addition to access to our Discord server, you'll also get access to our monthly Boba Chats, a bonus podcast where Rira and I and some guests will get together each month and have a more casual discussion on stuff that may or may not be book related, as well as answer some listener Q&A. Honey Boba members will also have access to a poll to help decide an official Books and Boba book pick once per quarter. So if any of that sounds interesting to you, support Books and Boba on Patreon by going to patreon.com/booksandboba. As always, Rira and I really appreciate your support. All right, thanks for listening, and I'm on with the show.
You're listening to Whoa! Potluck.
You're listening to Books and Boba, a book club and podcast featuring books by Asian and Asian American authors. My name is Marvin Yue.
And I'm Rira Yu.
And on this episode, we have an author chat with Cara Tanamachi, the author of the second year single, a new rom-com that just came out.
Yeah, just in time for Valentine's Day, which is a very crucial part of this book. It is about someone who was anti-Valentine's Day and sort of got convinced that Valentine's Day might not be as bad as she thought.
Yeah, the story follows the main character, Sora, who is a writer who starts a hashtag movement to go single for February in the wake of a messy breakup. You can definitely see the rom-com machinations, but it's also a story about Sora learning to love herself, learning about self-care and overcoming her own self-esteem issues as well.
Yeah, I mean, I was really reminded of 10 Things I Hate About You in this book. A lot of like the old 90s and early 2000s rom-coms. So if you are a fan of those, this might be your book.
Yeah, who doesn't love reading rom-coms during Is that a thing? Is reading romances around Valentine's Day a thing?
I mean, there's a reason why like rom-coms come out during Christmas and during Valentine's Day.
So yeah, we chat with Cara about her book, about how she became an author, and also touch a little bit about her Japanese-American family history as well. So I hope you enjoy our conversation with Cara Tanamachi. And we are here with Cara Tanamachi, the author of the second year single, a new rom-com that's coming out on the 31st. Welcome to the show, Cara.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
To get started, we always love to, since we are a podcast focusing on Asian and Asian American authors, we always love to hear, your story of how you became an author and how you got started writing specifically romances and rom-coms.
Yeah. Well, I've always, it started with the love of reading. Like I've just always loved to read, and I would read everything I could get my hands on, and I always wanted to write. And in fact, I grew up in Texas. On my dad's side, I'm fourth generation Japanese American, and on my mom's side, there's Irish, English, Scottish, Texan. I don't know how you even put that. And so I had an interesting upbringing, but in middle school, I wrote a short story that my English teacher thought I had plagiarized. So, and I hadn't. It was all about unicorns and a group of unicorns versus Pegasus. And so, but she still thought I had plagiarized it somehow. But I'm so grateful to my parents and my mom especially, who said, "Well, this means that maybe you're good at writing. You know, maybe you're good at writing. Maybe you should write." So
yeah. Was that like it was so good there was no way a child wrote this, or did?
I mean, looking at it now,
Wow.
you know, I it was pretty clear to me that, you know, a 12-year-old wrote it, but I just had such a love of writing, and I always wanted to write fiction. I went to the University of Pennsylvania though, and my dad, being very pragmatically an Asian American doctor, you know, was like, well, but what are you going to do in the meantime? Like, what are you really going to do? Because you can't just write novels, you know, and expect to make a living, and you're not coming back home. So, you know, what are you going to do? So I was a journalist for a while, and you know, I said, Dad, no, I can get a job with my English degree. So I was a journalist for a while, and then a marketing writer. And but I always loved rom-coms and romances. I'm a sucker for a happily ever after ending, and I don't know. I feel like you know, the world could use a little more joy, especially these days. So you know, I like putting more of that in the world. And when I was a marketing writer, I wrote my first novel, I Do But I Don't, and worked on that for a while I had my day job, and had a friend of mine who was very encouraging and sort of was my writing cheerleader during that time, and helped me finish, because I had that problem with finishing. I would start a project, stop, stop. And she was finally the one that's like, no, I think you should finish this one. This is the one you should finish. And I published that under a different name, Cara Lockwood. My maiden name is Cara Tanamachi, and I got married, and Cara Lockwood was my first married name, and divorced and married again. So now I'm back to my maiden name, Cara Tanamachi.
I mean, I noticed that you've written not a few books as Cara Lockwood.
Over 30 books.
Yes, yeah, that's right. I've been busy.
Like, has your dad come around, or is he still thinking it's like not a real job?
You know, he's come around, and it's funny too, because he's like now my biggest fan. Even some of the books that are pretty like steamy romance, he'll still pass them out to his friends, and I'm like, Dad, you don't have to pass that one out. I mean, you know, that's got a shirtless man on the cover. You don't have to pass that one out. But he's a huge cheerleader now. Like, and I don't think he, you know, I think he was just a practical dad, you know, practical Asian American dad who's like, how are you going to pay the bills? But now he likes to brag. He likes to brag now. So he's definitely in my corner for sure.
Yeah, like parents who think that journalism is a proper career, well, you're in for a rude awakening. There's the trenches are quite deep.
I kind of feel like Asian parents saying journalism's a practical career is just them settling, like, well, my child likes to write. At least this is like a respectable writing job.
Exactly. Well, yeah, and I mean, I worked for newspapers, so and at that, you know, they've been dying for 20 years, so it's been, you know, it was kind of a rough sell anyway.
Yeah, but how is that jump from covering news? I'm guessing, I mean, the news cycle is very grim. It relies on a lot of let's say crime and tragedies. How is it going from that to writing happily ever after?
Yeah, you know, well, for one, it was a relief, I think, because for several years at the newspaper, I was on the crime beat. So I was always being sent out to these terrible situations, these, you know, to interview the families of murder victims, or, you know, DUI accidents, or, I mean, it was just like one tragedy after another. And I kept asking to get off that beat, but my editor was like, but you're so good at it. You've got that. What is that thing they say? Oh yeah, empathy. You've got that empathy thing. And then you go and you talk to people, and people want to talk to you. And I'm like, great. Right. Because I would feel so bad coming to these homes and I would knock on the door and I'd be like, I'm so sorry to be here, like basically on the worst day of your life. If you please tell me to leave. And then normally they were so kind and they came in and they would want to talk about their loved one because who wouldn't, want to say all the good things about them and not the, and have them remembered in the way you want. But so that was a hard job. It was like one of those jobs that kind of sticks with you for a time, and some of those stories stick with you. And so I'm very happy to be in this happily ever after space now, where I get to control. There's if tragedy happens, then good things happen too. So it's much better now. Let me just say that.
Well, you published so many books under Cara Lockwood. I have to ask, is this your first book publishing under your maiden name? Yes, it is. It is, and I'm very excited about it.
I just feel like it's truly me, and it just so happened that, Cara Lockwood was my name at the time when I got my first book, but I also don't feel like it fully expressed who I am, and I have my cousin Dana Tanamachi is an artist, and she was so excited when I told her I was going to be using my maiden name, and she's like, "Go Tanamachi, let's do this," because Tanamachi is a fairly unusual Japanese name. So, us cousins have to stick together.
Yeah, I was curious about your previous author name, because actually a lot of Asian American authors early on in their publication journey, they're encouraged to go by a pen name that doesn't show that they're Asian. And I was wondering if that was the same situation, but it wasn't.
Yeah, it just happened to be happenstance. Although I will say, if I had tried under my maiden name, I do wonder if I would have gotten resistance, because I do have a lot of friends, Asian American romance writers who felt that, and other writers too, who felt that, if they weren't, sort of generic enough that might be a stumbling block for them. But I think thankfully things are changing. I don't know if they're changing fast enough, but thankfully things are changing.
Well, we've been doing this podcast for a number of years now, and I can say that it has gotten better. It's been nice to see more Asian American romance authors. We actually have an entire category on our bookshop affiliate page, and it just makes me so happy, because for a very long time, love interests weren't we didn't have Asian American love interests, and then on top of that, mixed race, multi-ethnic love interests. And I couldn't help but notice that your main character in the second you're single and also your previous novels, you have mixed race characters. Can you talk about how your own background shaped those characters' experiences?
Yeah, as I mentioned before, my dad's Japanese American, my mom is Irish Scottish American, and I grew up in the South, and it was I think it's for people with blended backgrounds. I think it can be difficult, because I have had that experience where I'm not Asian enough and I'm not white enough, and and how do I fit into these different groups, and I feel like that people with multiracial backgrounds can bring a very interesting viewpoint, and I write characters like that because I'm just authentically writing what I know and my own story. And I think it's becoming more common, and will even be more common, in the future, that there are more blended families, there are more people with multiracial backgrounds, and I think that's what makes America great. I think that's such a strength that we have, and I think those stories are so important because they are becoming more common, and they're a part of who we are.
Yeah, I mean, romance has been such a the genre's been kind of narrow for a really long time on, heteronormative and, Western beauty standards. So it is nice that we're getting more diversity, not just in race, but also in disability and whatnot. So moving on to your newest book, The Second You're Single, can you tell us a little bit about that? Can you give us a quick elevator pitch?
Yeah, it's really about the main character, Sora, is like me. She comes from a Japanese and European background. She has had some very difficult times dating. She lives in the Chicago area, which I do too, and she's basically burnt out on dating. So she decides really just to boycott Valentine's Day. So she decides to make February her hashtag Go Solo month. And the very day she decides that, she meets an amazing person that could be the one. And it challenges her resolve to, focus on herself for a while. And it also challenges her views on love. So I don't know. It's a story that's deeply rooted in my own personal experience, because I was a divorced mom for 8 years and dated for a long time in a difficult setting, and there were times where I gave up on Valentine's Day and love in general too, and but found my way back, thankfully. Thankfully, I'm happily married now.
As someone who has never been on a dating app, thank God. What were some of your unexpected dates? I won't say misfortunate, but unexpected.
My very first, so newly divorced, I'm like, okay, I'm going to try these apps. Let me try this. My very first date, I went to a coffee shop and showed up. He looked absolutely nothing like his picture. This was clearly not him. And then about 5 minutes into the date, he told me he was married.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I said, but why didn't you said you were divorced on your profile? And he said, well, if I had said I was married, would you have met me? I'm like, well, no. So I'm like, okay, well, I think this date's over. As I was trying to leave, he said, wait, I've made something for you. And then he pulls out a Ziploc bag. It's filled with peanuts, raisins, like pretzels. And he says, this is the trail mix that I make for my coworkers. And I'm thinking, okay, first of all, it's gotta be roofied. Like, there have to be roofies in that. and it's in a Ziploc bag, just like,
That's super sketch. Yeah.
First date trail mix is not a killer move that I was picturing.
Right. And also, we'd never talked about hiking or snack foods or anything like that. I had to take, I don't know if it was just ultra politeness in me. I don't know. Cause on my dad's side, there's just, I don't know, Japanese politeness. And on my mom's side, there's like Southern politeness. And it's just this tsunami of politeness where we just can't, I don't know. So, but I just pick it up and I basically run out. I was meeting some friends for dinner, and I took the trail mix and I put it on the table and I said, is this what happens with app dating? Is this what happens? Does everybody just get trail mix at the end of their date? Thankfully, they said no, that I should try it again.
Yeah, I'm wondering if that actually works on anybody. If that's like a proven strategy for this guy.
I don't know. Maybe it was also his first app date. I don't know.
But I think everyone wants their meet cute moment that's shown in like rom-com movies. And Sora has a meet cute, but it's also kind of a nightmare in the beginning. Can you tell us a little bit more about that scene?
Yeah, so she's just post a bad breakup, and she's at the grocery store, and maybe feeling a pity party, which we can all have now and again. But she runs into this very handsome baker handing out samples, and I mean, who doesn't love samples? Really, come on, little torts, come on, the desserts. Please, at the bakery, I'm all over it. So, she meets this very cute baker, and they're getting along swimmingly, and everything seems to be going great. And then, who crashes the party but her ex-husband and his new girlfriend? And it spirals from a meet cute to a complete nightmare for her, unfortunately. But keep reading. That's all I have to say. It gets better.
Yeah, I really like the conceit of, because it's this is how it always happens, right? Like the moment you decide you don't want something anymore, you find it. And I don't know if it's just the universe speaking or just luck in general, but I've known not a few amount of people actually who has had this happen to them when they swear off dating and all of a sudden they're like, damn it, I met someone. Or they decide, I'm going to date everyone I can see. And then, oh, I found the one, right?
Right. I think that happens a lot. And I think, I know that's happened in my friend group as well. And I think the basis of it is when we're focused almost too hard on dating and, and trying to find someone that we're not actually relaxed and being ourselves, our authentic selves. And I think when there's a freedom in saying, you know what, I'm not worried about that. I'm not worried about dating. I'm not worried about who I'm going to meet. I'm just going to live my life. And then I think you're both relaxed, but also more yourself. And then when you're more yourself, I think you're better able to like meet a better person for you, than somebody who checks all the boxes from your family or the list you have in your brain, or, I think, so sometimes it definitely is luck, but I also think you become more yourself when you're more relaxed and less pressured and, kind of taking the, the pressure off yourself to find someone. I think then you often do.
Yeah, as someone who was determined to stay single for her entire life, I met my partner in college, and we've been together for like over 11 years now. So, yeah, people were joking, be like, "Oh, you say that you want to stay single forever, but watch, you're going to be the first person who like gets a boyfriend or girlfriend." And I'm like, "That's never going to happen," but it did happen. So.
I just think love is amazing. Like in the movie Love Actually, love is all around. It's incredibly powerful, and it's it finds a way, I think, even for people trying to keep it out, even people working very hard to keep it out, it finds a way. It's sneaky, that love.
Yeah, it is sneaky. But Sora, your main character, I guess you have two main characters because your book switches POVs, but Sora is very cynical. She's like, Valentine's Day is the worst. I have a personal vendetta against it. And then you have Jack, the handsome baker, who, actually had a crush on Sora since kindergarten. And I just thought that was kind of rare to have a guy who believed in love and also, held onto a childhood crush for this long. Oh my God.
I know. I'm a sucker for sweethearts, and Jack's a sweetheart. He's a romantic at heart. He believes in love. He believes in the one. And I think it does take a little bit of courage to, be a romantic these days. I think everything is, presented to, love is presented pretty cynically and often happens that way. But Jack's a sweetheart. And, I just love that mentality of somebody who, believes in love and looks for love.
Yeah. I mean, your book is about, it's a rom-com. It's about, finding the one, but it also takes a hard look at like the idea of how love is not only packaged, but expressed in like culture, media, society. Sora, even though she's a cynic, is also coming off being a serial monogamist, right? She's been through a series of relationships, and because she feels like she needs to be in one because it's what society expects from her, but she just keeps picking the wrong guys. And this leads her to become like a singles guru, right? When she creates a hashtag movement about going single in February, which also adds that rom-com wrench into it, right? Where she's trying to be this spokesperson for self-care and not buying into the Valentine's mythos, but then finding the one person that she really, really digs.
Yeah, absolutely. And Sora does have to do a lot of soul searching and as much as, because I think she starts the hashtag movement, she really says, okay, I am going to take some time for myself, but almost immediately is not taking time for herself. She's still looking outward for that satisfaction, for that, validation that she's looked for in all of her previous relationships. And, I think eventually she does have to do, her own soul searching about, what it is that, that she has to provide herself first before she can, really love somebody else and have someone love her fully in return. So I think, she'll get there. She'll get there. And I think a lot of us look to our relationships to bring us satisfaction, but also to define us. And ultimately we have to, define ourselves. And our relationships are amazing and a wonderful part of our lives, but we also have to have that core first, the core self-love, before we can love others.
Yeah. And I like that this is where you inject a little bit of what I assume to be that Japanese American upbringing, which is, not being the nail that sticks out because it gets hammered down, which I believe is a Japanese proverb, right?
Yes. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. My parents constantly, they often fought about this because my dad basically wanted to blend in, and my mom wanted to be outspoken and change things because, my dad was conventional and my mom was a little more liberal. And so, she would be political. She wanted to be political and outspoken. And my dad wanted to be like, let's just blend in. Let's just not make a scene. Let's just be quiet, So there was that constant back and forth. So I had a front row seat to both sides of that argument. But yeah, and I think Sora herself in her own family had a lot of that that internalization of, don't speak out, like just, be conventional. And I think eventually she learns that she does just need to be herself, be her authentic self, and her family supports her in that. In the end,
in the end,
they might need a little, persuading, but by the end.
Yeah, I mean, like Marvin said, it is a very Japanese thing to blend in. And I think that's, at least for Japanese Americans, I think it's because of the history that they've had in this country for, simply being Japanese during World War II. And, that has affected future generations. And I think that mindset is still there.
Oh, absolutely. And for my family personally, we my grandparents met in an internment camp in Arizona. So they met each other and got married there at, in the late teens. I think my grandmother was 18 or 19 and my grandfather was like 20 or something like that. They got married in the camps. And that was very much a part of our family story of my grandfather's family in California owned a small grocery store, and they were interned, and his father was taken away by the FBI in the night, and they didn't know what had happened to him. And my grandmother, they were sharecroppers who, also lost everything. And that story, I mean, my grandfather for a long time never wanted to put his money in a bank because he felt like the very minute he did, it would be taken. So it was very much part of our family story. And my grandmother liked to talk about the perseverance and the spirit of collaboration and how so many families helped one another in this time and, grew beautiful gardens. And my grandfather was focused more on, let's watch our backs. This could happen again. So, yeah, I think ultimately my dad brought away from that, let's just, work hard, keep your head down. Don't stand out. Don't say anything. Things can happen one way or another. So, yeah, and it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate. And even when I was growing up in Texas in history class, I would be, there weren't many Asian Americans in my class, and I was the only Japanese American in my class, and I was the only one able to talk about the internment camps, and they weren't even mentioned, in our history class in Texas. Like it wasn't even taught. And so there was a lot of focus on Pearl Harbor, and I understand that, but there wasn't any focus on the internment camps. So I was the only one raising my hand, being the nail, saying, oh, there's this thing that happens. and then the teacher would be like, oh yeah, actually that did happen. Okay, let's moving on.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of curriculum, I mean, this is a sidebar. Like book bans have been on the rise, especially in Texas. And I'm not sure if it was Texas or if this was Kansas, but recently Julie Otsuka's book, Buddha in the Attic, I think, which is about Japanese internment camps, it got banned from a school curriculum because they said, oh, it's going to make, it's like too much for our kids. Like, we don't want the non-Asian kids to feel bad about what happened in this country. And I'm like, what about the Asian kids who literally have families who were in these camps?
Exactly. Well, and I mean, I'm an author, so I'm absolutely against any book banning of any kind. But, I think that argument that we're going to feel bad is, it's a false argument. It's a false argument. And I would really point to Germany and how they discuss and educate their kids about the Holocaust. And, they don't shy away from it, and they're honest about it. And it's a thing that it's not about making people feel bad. It's about being honest about where we came from so that this doesn't happen again. If you don't talk about it, if you're not honest about it, then, it could happen again. And I think the idea that kids would feel bad, I think, is selling all the kids short, and I think that's more the parents feeling bad than the kids would feel bad. And so I would ask the parents to take a look at themselves about why they feel bad, because they probably weren't making the decisions in the 40s. You know what I mean? Like they didn't run those camps, but did they agree with it now? Is that why they feel bad? Like, why are you feeling bad? Let's maybe do
some soul searching.
Yeah. Because it sounds like the parents are feeling bad. Yeah.
I mean, that's really the point of, like, it's not about feeling bad. Like, I read books sometimes that are, grimdark, and it's not like it's bad that I feel sad about things, but it makes me reflect. Like, reading your book and reflecting on some of the self-harming, self-esteem ways that I put myself down, or that, some toxic things that I might have done in the past. You read it, you say, oh, maybe I should reflect on myself, and then you hopefully become a better person, right?
Absolutely. And that's the whole point of, I think, looking at history honestly, too, to really take a look at that and take the lessons you can from it. And, burying things and ignoring things just doesn't help us evolve or become better people. That doesn't help anybody.
But Marvin just brought up self-esteem and looking into our own toxic way of thinking. And I do want to bring up Sora's, Sora is described to be size 14. She is mid-size, and she seems to be hyper-conscious of her body and also the body of others. In the book, I couldn't help but notice that there was a lot of fixation on weight and also just the way people look. Why did you decide to give that character trait to Sora?
Yeah, I've done a lot of thinking about this because I've had some, early reviews of the book that people have pointed this out about the book. And I actually have done some personal soul searching around this because people did take issue with some of Sora's thoughts, and some of them are my thoughts. I have my own issues with weight, just my personal issues with weight. And, I have, it's been a time where I've, because of the feedback I've gotten, around the book, I have dug deeper, and I've been working with a body image therapist a little to just dig out my, take a look at my own issues, because Sora was my way of kind of delving into some of these issues that I've had in my family. And I think that there's a lot of pressure, to look a certain way, and certainly, and sometimes that can be internalized in a bad way. I think ultimately Sora gets to a place of self-acceptance. But I do think that, I think we all have work to do, but, I take it very seriously. So, I've been doing some work on myself too, to explore some of these issues. And I think sometimes you don't know they exist unless you put them out there, and, I for anybody who, feels Sora is too hard on other people and herself, I am sorry about that. But I have been doing some work on myself, and, I'm a work in progress.
I mean, we're all work in progresses, and, it is a way that a lot of people think. I mean, there's a reason why advertisements and, the beauty industry, they capitalize on insecurity. And I thought it was really interesting that even though Sora is very conscious of her body and thinks that, comparing herself to her mom and her sister, who are like very health conscious and very much like, yeah, you have to exercise, you have to diet, keto is the way. But like from Jack's POV and also his brother, they mentioned that, she's really beautiful, she's hot, and it's like not a perspective that you really see of people who are not conventionally attractive or slim.
Right. And I think the other thing about Sora is that she's also dealing with a very complex relationship with her mother, who is also not happy with her weight. And I think despite trying to be healthy, there's still a lot of, I think many of us have difficulty with this self-image, and some of it comes from our family and our immediate relationships, and some of the feedback we may be getting from our parents. Some of it is from our peers, and some of it's from ourselves, and some of it's from society as a whole. And I think Sora is definitely a creature of her family, and I think the fact that her mom praises her sister a lot, and her sister who is a smaller size than her, she's internalized that a great deal. But Jack and his brother see her as she is, so I hope that comes across too, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, part of the story is kind of rejecting this like mass media version of Valentine's Day and love, and what love should look like, and what you should look like to deserve love. Because, in real life, it doesn't happen that way. Not everyone is like a supermodel, and not everyone likes that stuff, And again, this story is ultimately about Sora's coming to accept herself as someone who deserves good things, which is, it's what we want from a rom-com, right?
Right. And, Jack struggled with his own body issues too. So I think it's unfortunately everywhere, I think. But yeah, I think what I hope people take away from the book is that we're all deserving of love, and, we should all have it.
Yeah. I mean, also, we can't divorce the fact that like Asian culture really focuses on your weight and your slimness. I mean, it's so ingrained in our culture. And it doesn't help that, as diasporans, as Americans, we have a different diet, and therefore our body grows in a different way. So when our parents are like, why aren't you as slim as when I was a teen? It's like, well, it's a different generation. It's a different diet. Yeah, I mean, like, as someone who, was severely underweight growing up as a teen, like, people used to really compliment me on being skinny. And, like, my doctors would say, actually, this is not very good. You really need to gain weight. And it's just a lot of priority is placed on looks rather than health. And yeah, hopefully that is changing in our culture. I feel like it is, because for a long time, like, Asian American girls, a lot of them had eating disorders and a lot of like body dysmorphia. I feel like it's gotten better in terms of exploring that and talking more about it.
And I'm glad we are talking more about it, because I agree with you. Like, at any big family gathering, it would inevitably always be something. There'd be something about weight, Like there'd be something about like, oh, you've
It's
lost
like
so much
the
weight.
first thing
Yeah,
that
the
they mentioned. Like you open the door and they're like, "Oh,
Yeah.
did you gain weight?"
Exactly.
Like,
Did you gain weight? Did you lose weight? Like it's not the hair. It's
have
not,
some food. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh,
Yes.
eat my food. And it's like
Yes.
you can't just do that. You can't just criticize our weight and then give us a ton of food, which is your love language, and then criticize us for eating it.
I have been there. I have been there.
We've all been there. Yeah. But like in closing, I just want to ask, like, have you done your own hashtag go solo? Or I guess like, was there ever a moment where you're like, I really need to prioritize self-care?
Yes. Yeah, I have because this I mean, the 8 years that I was a single mom and dating, I did multiple breaks of dating and just like, I'm not going to date and I'm just going to do self-care and I'm just going to focus on myself. The first one didn't end up with, meeting my soulmate, but I think going through those and doing those, it was very, very beneficial just to take some time to myself. And also I think doing that helps us learn that we can, we're good on our own. I mean, many of us want a partner, and if you don't want a partner, that's fine. But for the people who do want a partner, knowing that you can be happy on your own is important too. I think we all need to feel that, so that we're just a little more secure in ourselves and love ourselves a little more. But yeah, I have done the hashtag go solo. Sometimes deliberately and sometimes not deliberately, but several times deliberately. Yes.
Yeah. Well, we can follow Sora on her journey of attempting to go solo with the second year single. Cara, thank you once again so much for joining us on Books and Boba. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Thanks so much. And thanks for all that you do for Asian American authors. I just appreciate it so much.
And that was our conversation with Cara Tanamachi, the author of the second year single. And those of you listening close enough might have heard that her audio seems extra crisp. And that's because she was actually chatting with us on a really fancy podcasting setup, because I guess she has a podcast of her own, right?
Yeah, it's called Skip to the Good Part. And she talks to romance authors, actually. So very cool. And for those of you who are planning to read the second year single, just a few trigger warnings I would like to give out. There is some body image insecurities, and there's also a mention of miscarriage. So if those are things that you're particularly sensitive to, I would say proceed with caution. But moving on from that, Marvin, do you have any Valentine's Day stories that you would like to share with our listeners as a closing?
Not really. I don't really have.
Not really.
We don't really do Valentine's Day, me and my partner. We've kind of agreed to just keep things chill, which I appreciate. When we were dating, our Valentine's Day date was actually just going to Soup Plantation, the soup and salad bar, when it was still open before the pandemic shut it down. It's funny because I actually got into, speaking of like the expectations and importance society places on grand gestures and Valentine's Day, I actually got into a fight with a really good friend who thought I wasn't doing enough for Valentine's Day. Like it got into like she was screaming at me. It was I still vividly remember.
I mean, as long as your partner doesn't mind or you've talked about it.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, I guess it wouldn't be fair if I didn't share a Valentine's Day story on my end, but I actually moved to LA on Valentine's Day.
Oh, so romantic.
Yeah, so romantic. Dan and I moved across country, literally across the country from New York to LA, and our things weren't ready, so literally we slept in a bare apartment with just blankets. There were no furniture. We had just the clothes in our suitcase. That was it. That was our Valentine's Day. So, that was our first Valentine's Day, now that I think about it.
It really sets a tone, right? This is what I feel bad about those people who do grand gestures. And, if that's your thing, all the power to you. It just sounds so stressful to have to come up with something bigger and better every year. Personally, I am very happy with our chill Valentine's traditions.
I mean, Dan does a lot of grand gestures too. So I've had the best of both worlds. I've had the grand gestures and the very chill Valentine's Day. I think there was a Valentine's Day when both of us had like the flu and it was really awful. So like what our Valentine's Day dinner was just like soup and watching a really bad movie. So honestly, love comes in all expressions and forms.
Yeah, you made good memories, and that's what it's all about in the end. All right, so as a reminder for our February book club pick, we are reading The Charmed List by Julie Abe to continue our February theme of reading rom-coms. So if you have already finished the book and have some thoughts to share, please let us know on our Goodreads. As always, we love to include your feedback on our discussion episodes. And it's just nice to know that people are reading along with us. But on that note, I'm wishing everyone who's celebrating a very happy Valentine's Day. And we'll see you all next time on Books and Boba. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Books and Boba. This podcast was hosted by Marvin Yue and Rira Yu and edited and produced by Marvin Yue. Follow the book club on Twitter and Instagram by going to @BooksandBoba and engage with us on Goodreads on our Goodreads group. You can also check out past episodes of the podcast by going to booksandboba.com and by subscribing to us on your favorite podcast app. Don't forget, you can support Books and Boba and Asian American authors by purchasing books at our bookshop.org account. Check out the link in our show notes and also at booksandboba.com. Books and Boba is a proud member of the Potluck Podcast Collective, a collective of Asian American hosted podcasts featuring unique voices and stories from the Asian diaspora. Learn more about the collective and check out our fellow Potluck shows by visiting the website podcastpotluck.com. Thanks for listening.
Hey, Sharon.
Hey, Ramen.
How are folks still racist?
I know, right? We're like 2 decades into the 21st century.
Yeah, and second question, where's my jetpack?
Well, I can't help you there, but have I got a podcast for you. Modern Minorities is a show where each week my longtime pal Ramen and I uncover common and uncommon truths that we all need to hear for our majority brains and ears.
Yeah, Sharon and I have spoken to doctors, lawyers, directors, climate activists, angry Asians, athletes, chefs, writers.
Folks who are Black, brown, gay, straight, and everything in between.
Past guests have included comedian Margaret Cho, Southern Poverty Law Center journalist Geraldine Mariba, comics creator Jean Lun Yang, and many, many more.
We've even talked about Ramadan, Black History Month, Kamala Khan, and Robin being queer.
It's like we're trying to solve racism with the podcast.
Challenge accepted.
So check out Modern Minorities at modmypod.com or wherever you get your favorite podcasts.
Remember, we're all modern minorities, but we're no one's model minority.